Welcome into the Backroads Bill podcast. I'm Ben, and this episode, we are diving into a topic that has been mentioned a number of times on the podcast. In fact, we even had an episode that talked about the rise and fall of this particular Northern Ontario community. And that is, of course, we're talking Cobalt. And today, our guest is Maggie Wilson, who is actually the president of the Cobalt Historical Society. So, of course, if you don't know the story about Cobalt, it rose in population quite quickly because of mining, and then just as fast as it grew in the early 1900s, it then fell. And even today, there are only hundreds of people in this settlement, which is a far cry from where it was, again, during this kind of big boomy period. So Maggie's going to talk to us through kind of some of the really cool historical things, some of the tourism stuff, a little bit of the history. It's a really interesting listen. It was great having Maggie on the podcast. But before we get to that, I do want to just mention quickly, next week from June 9th to 13th, so if you're listening to it as this podcast drops, next week is Kindness Week. And if you don't know what Kindness Week is here in North Bay, it is a week where there is CMHA helps run it. And basically, it's just about being kind to one another. There's a number of events that go on. There's a number of really cool things that happen, like the Kindness Cast and things that are happening at different schools where you get the community involved, you get some of the local schools involved, and really the message is just be kind to one another. You'll also want to keep an eye out on Echo, because our 4 core shows, To North Bay with Love, this show, the Backroads Bill podcast, Echo Essentials, and the Echo Sportscast, we're all going to have really kindness-themed episodes. For instance, next week on this podcast, we're going to have Trees for Nipissing come in. Peggy and Cindy will be coming in from that organization. We're going to be talking about all of the good work that they do for our area, planting trees, the environment, and all of that fun stuff. And also for that whole week, keep your eye out for, again, all the cool stuff that's happening. And on the Friday downtown, there's a really cool luncheon event that they're going to have. If you want to learn more, go to kindnessnorth.ca. That is kindnessnorth.ca. And that will give you all of the information that you will possibly need. And you don't really need a week to tell you this, but always just be kind to one another. That's basically it. So on to Maggie, but first a word from today's sponsor, Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay.
Hey North Bay, it's time to celebrate. The city is turning 100, and Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay invites you to the party. Be at home in our spacious suites, each featuring a kitchen. Yeah, a real kitchen. Also, enjoy our comfy living spaces and brand new fitness gear so you can keep feeling great while staying on budget. Planning a big bash or business event? We've got the perfect meeting spaces right here on site. Plus, with our partnerships at The Grand and Stock Transportation, your guests and delegates are in great hands. Want to know the best part? We're right beside the beautiful Cape Paceway, steps to North Bay's lively waterfront, and moments from downtown's shopping, dining, and entertainment. Celebrate the Centennial with us all year long with an exclusive discount. Just use the code Centennial when booking your stay. Be at home with Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. Join the party today at 495 Oak Street West or call us at 705-495-3000.
So on the Backroads Bill podcast, we love talking history. We love talking, obviously, Northern Ontario. That's what this podcast is. And today we have a really neat guest, Maggie Wilson, who's the president of the Cobalt Historical Society. Maggie, welcome into the Backroads Bill podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, you know, Ben, it's a real treat to have Maggie. I think when I think of commitment, I think commitment to heritage appreciation, and what she does is exemplary, as well as the Cobalt Historical Society, and just the fact that Cobalt is in Northern Ontario, when we consider the Silver Rush going back to approximately 1905, that it's one of the most historic places as far as settlers are concerned, one of the most historic places in northern Ontario. And Ben, I don't know if you know, it has a National Historic Site designation, and there's not too many places in northern Ontario as well. But welcome, Maggie, and we're going to talk about heritage appreciation, that's for sure. You were in the community since, I think, 2016. What were your first impressions of coming up the road, so to speak, and retiring in Cobalt?
Thanks, guys, for having me here today. I first came to Cobalt with my geology husband in 2009, and it was kind of sad looking to me. My first impression was I'm reminded of a saying, ugly on the eye. All of the rust and the sharpness and the gashes in the rock, and it was hard work up here too when we were out collecting rocks on the old mine dumps. And he kept pushing me to retire here. And I said, no, I don't think so. We were from Southern Ontario. But move forward now to 2016, and it's time to consider retirement. And the market was right for selling, so we were able to relocate here, and I haven't been happier. It was the best decision I ever made. Since then, I've become involved with the Cobalt Historical Society and several other volunteer organizations. You need to keep yourself occupied during the long winters. And in 2017, when President Vivian Highlands passed away, I assumed the chair position and have been there ever since.
And that's going, and that's 11 years now, I guess. And again, when we think of Cobalt, we think of, again, one of Canada's most historic places because of its mining history. And we know that there's so much to see and do in Cobalt. And explain that relationship with the museum as compared to the Historical Society.
Yeah, it's a common misunderstanding and that we are the same as the museum. People come to us, say, with some artifacts, and you want to maybe redirect your query to the museum, and they're a little puzzled. Originally, the trail has been around now 40 years in some iteration or other, and we were both working together, or was actually one body. The trail was headquartered out of the mining museum. But in 1999, when a lot of funding became available through different tourism agencies with governing bodies, we were formally incorporated. We're a nonprofit incorporation, and we separated away from the mining museum so that we could actually build and develop the Heritage Silver Trail in partnership with the town of Cobalt and Coleman Township. So it's a three-way partnership that they help us out when we need a little bit of help, and we help promote the mining heritage. The Mining Museum and the Cobalt Historical Society have the same mandate to preserve and promote mining heritage, but I like to look at it as if we are the caretakers of the outside artifacts, and the Mining Museum looks after all of the mineral specimens and the paintings and the displays that are indoors at their place on Silver Street.
Yeah, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself too. I want to ask you, give us a thumbnail of Cobalt significant and the Silver Rush. Take us back to that 1905 or thereabouts period and what happened, and then I think viewers and listeners of the Backroads Bill podcast will understand a bit more about Cobalt.
Yeah, well, way back, it actually goes back to 1903 when the Timiskaming and Northern Ontario Railway came through. They wanted to connect Southern Ontario to Northern Ontario to access the farming land at the clay belt up north. And wouldn't you know it, their contractors discovered silver at the south end of the lake. And that was the beginning of a great rush that really took off in 1905, 1906, once the train was actually through and the shipments were being sent to the assorted milling facilities in the States and overseas, and people thought, holy cow, there is silver up there. And the rush was on and really hit large in 1906. From there, the prospectors fanned out and went further to Silver Center and Elk Lake. They were up to Boston Creek, where they found gold. Then, of course, Kirkland Lake in 1913 came on. A little bit before that was 1909 up in the Porcupine, where all the gold was discovered. From this event came new processes and techniques and engineering practices in hard rock mining. They did a lot of things back then that are not considered good practice today, and that's putting it mildly, using harmful chemicals to extract the ore, the silver from the ore, polluting the lakes, no safety. And from the growth of cobalt and the mining industry, all of these practices and policies evolved over time, and so things are much better today than they were back then. And cobalt still limps along.
Yeah. Now, when you use AI and you put Backroads Bill and Cobalt in the search function, Ben, it comes up with Bill, blah, 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 has done a number of stories. And I have done a number of stories on Cobalt. One of my favorite, though, takes me right back to the beginning, I think, when I've been a fan of Northern Ontario tourism and visiting sites everywhere, is the Heritage Silver Trail, which in my mind was the first go around anywhere in Northern Ontario where people had a self-directed tour. Tell us how the evolution of that was and where it is today. And that's a big question because it still exists today. And if you really, really want to understand and appreciate what went back on in that 1903, 1905 and so on, I think you have to drive the Heritage Silver Trail.
Absolutely agreed. It's something that you must see, and to my knowledge, there isn't anything like it elsewhere in the world where you can still poke around the old foundations and the old mining ruins. It started in fits and starts way back into the 60s. There were people thought that they would be able to make a go of some tourism business, and it gradually evolved to 1999 when we got the funding to develop and build it. And at the time, they were very optimistic, shall we say. They had several sites that were still standing. A lot of the headframes were still in place. And I should say that the majority of the trail is on property that is owned by Agnico Eagle Mines. And they've been very supportive of the heritage and have granted us permission to develop the trail. Of course, over time, as some of the artifacts, the mining head frames have declined in care, they're all fenced in for people's safety. And so nobody's actually looking at preserving the head frames per se, and they come down. They become they need to come down because even though there's fences there, people do find themselves on the other side, and that is a concern. I'm kind of rambling. I need to get back on track here. Also, as the mine plant decays, so do the people involved. We're getting older. Most of us sitting around the board table at the Cobalt Historical Society are retired. Most of us are in our mid to late 60s, into our 70s. We even have some in the 80-year-olds. And people get tired, and we can only do so much in a short period of time. And so we've consolidated the trail to remove some of the sites that are further into Coleman Township. For example, around Kerr Lake, there was several artifacts there, but that particular property changed hands. So rather than negotiate a new agreement with the new mine owner, which changed hands several times, by the way, we decided to take it off the trail altogether, to keep it within the circuit around Cobalt Lake and in the town of Cobalt.
Yeah, no.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Two of my favorite stops are the Glory Hole and the right-of-way headframe. And most recently, we know that through the EONTC Ontario Northland, because of safety concerns, barricades were put up. And I think if you want to tell us about, I mean, in 2024, they did another assessment, and I think the report's going to be released in this current year. How important that assessment is to, with regards to the mitigation of risk. But those two stops in particular on the tour are really, really important. But at the same time, you want to get the tour back, I would say, where it was, so to speak.
The two of the properties on two sites on the trail, as you say, are the town site mine and the right-of-way mine. And they are both on present-day Ontario Northland Railway property. And when we started conversations with them, we had hoped to replace the roof on the right-of-way mine to prevent leaking. We had done, I don't know, it was something like $135,000 worth of work on the interior, and we wanted to protect that investment from the elements. So we approached them, and almost overnight, the barricades went up. We were not allowed on the property to even pick up trash. The barricades do not prevent people from walking onto the property, and they themselves, in my opinion, create a bit of a safety hazard for people that are vaulting over top of them. It's been 4 years now. There's a little bit of movement. As you say, they've been doing some studies, they've environmental and structural assessments. My understanding is that they will continue with engineering assessments this year. Their main goal is to determine if these two sites are indeed worthy of heritage designation, which I really hope that they would understand that it's pretty obvious that they are. The TNO would not have happened to the extent it has without the silver mines. They got the commission that was established back in 1902 was funded, and a lot of the politicians and a lot of the mayors and all the pals of these politicians made $1 bazillion on cobalt silver mines. And I would hope that they would recognize that their history is intimately tied to cobalt's history.
Yeah, because in 2002, the federal government designated the cobalt mining camp as a National Historic Site. And again, there's not too many of those.
Yes.
Anyway, tell us how important that is to cobalt as we know it today.
It's incredibly important, and something that bears repeating because people don't know that. People move here and they don't understand that. And unfortunately, with the limit of funds, we can't get that message out far enough and loud enough and frequently enough to get people to understand this is a National Historic Site, unlike anything else in the world. It doesn't, unfortunately, come with any money, and it doesn't come with any support from any federal agency. It's just a plaque on Main Street and a page on their website. But it is important, and I wish that the Ontario side of the operation would understand that they don't have to reinvent a wheel. It's already been determined. This is nationally important, globally important, I'd say too. And a little sideline on there, it is globally important because every year we have mining students from assorted universities across the world come and do their field classes on the Nipissing Hill and in and around the Cobalt Coleman heritage sites.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned the Nipissing Hill because on top from the vista and below, Ben, and I don't know, Ben, if you've seen the Nipissing Hill in Cobalt, but when you look across the lake, and the lake was once drained too, when you think about all the things that went on in Cobalt, when you look across, in the beginning, they pressure washed, so to speak, the superficial silver before they actually started to do underground work and adits and the like. But the Nipissing Hill, which has become revegetated on its own, at the same time, there's so much history by just looking at that hill in front of the lake to put the whole thing in perspective from the early beginnings. But that leads me to, and I really like your description about how important it is on the world stage, because there's so many stops and buildings that when you compare to other things, it's not like Science North, it's not like Dynamic Earth or the Fort William Historical Park. This is a community existed, and when you step back from it, you can almost sense how it was. And if you look at historic photos, and that's another thing the Historical Society has done a great job on, especially on their website, I love geo-referencing and going to Cobalt and standing at one spot and saying this is what it was like, because of the preservation attempts at doing that's really, you get a real good snapshot, I think, of history like no other. Maggie, maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah. I'll just speak a little bit about the photographs and why there are so many of Cobalt photographs at the time. And we do have an awesome resource of what it was like back in the day. Photography was just coming on, and everyone could afford a camera at the day, and Cobalt was the place to go. It was easy to get to. You got on the train in Toronto and you came up, and boom, here you were. There was places to stay, and it was a tourist destination as well as an investment destination, and people were taking pictures. And those pictures are now starting to come forward to us as people are clearing out their grandparents' archives, their photographs, and they're saying, "Would you like these?" And heck yeah! And so, and we can compare then and now, and you can get a sense of just how dynamic the town was back in the day. What was standing, say, in June was no longer there in September. It had been relocated from one side of town to the other. It was always in flux. If it wasn't people moving it for their own purposes, it was being burnt down. For instance, in July of 1909, a very tragic fire occurred on Lang Street and burned out the entire north end of town. And yeah, the pictures are fascinating. It's one of my favorite things about the job.
So it's summertime. We are officially in June. It feels like it's still April. I do remember, actually, it was April. We were planning stuff out for June, and in my head I go, oh, that's so long away. And here we are. It goes by quickly. As you get older, time goes faster. It's a very interesting thing. But because it's finally summertime, I mean, adventures happen all year round, but summertime is the perfect time to go on your next Backroads adventure. And that means having a reliable and durable and comfortable ride, which means it is the perfect time to get yourself into a brand new vehicle. And that's where our friends over at North Bay Toyota come in. Danny and his team are absolutely fantastic. They have everything that you would possibly need, no matter what your circumstances or what kind of adventures you go on or what size of family you have or how many people you need to get around. You can go for anything. You can go for the classic RAV4 if you're in a bit more of a rugged terrain. You can check out the Tacoma. Of course, if you have a family and you want to kind of really be conscious, maybe you're driving them to sports a lot. Again, you're going on those back roads. You can check out the Highlander, Grand Highlander, and Sienna. And of course, here on this podcast, we talk a lot about the nature. We talk a lot about environment, and that means green vehicles, electric vehicles. So check out some of their lineup of hybrid vehicles like the Prius, Camry, Crown, and Crown Signia. Get in and go at North Bay Toyota. Visit them at 640 McEwen, North Bay, or toyota.com for details. And thank you, Toyota, for being a great sponsor of the Backroads Bill podcast.
Hi, I'm Graham Shaver, host of the Kindness Cast. Here to tell you the Kindness Project is back from June 9 to 13. Do something kind, big or small, and share it on social media with the hashtag KindnessNorth. Also tune in that week to North Bay Echo's original shows, To North Bay with Love, Backroads Bill, Echo Essentials, and the Echo Sportscast featuring guests and topics all about kindness. The Kindness Project is powered by CMHA North Bay and District, helping to raise mental health awareness and create positive change in our communities, because kindness makes us all feel better. Head to kindnessnorth.ca to learn more.
Dear North Bay, as a single mom and full-time student, life can feel overwhelming and budgets are always tight. But one thing I never question is how deeply I care about my community. When I began volunteering at the North Bay Regional Health Centre, I saw firsthand how much the healthcare system means to people, especially when life takes an unexpected turn. It made me think, what if it was my child, my parent, or my friend that was in need of care? That's when I realized I wanted to do more, to be part of something bigger than myself. I joined the I Give Monthly Club because even a small monthly gift can have a meaningful impact, helping ensure everyone in our community has access to the care they need right here at home. If you believe in strong, local health care, I hope you'll join me. Sign up at nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125. It's simple and it matters. With gratitude, Kim Cosgrove.
One of my haunts in the Backroads is to go to Henry Drummond's, the remains of Henry Drummond's house that overlooks the lake. And of course, there's a cairn downtown about Henry Drummond, the great poet, and one of my favorite poems about the Red Canoe. Tell us about who Henry Drummond was, because that's kind of one of those many sidebar stories when you talk about Cobalt.
Yes, Henry Drummond was an MD. His brothers owned the Drummond mine, and he was the sort of the guy who stayed here on campus, as it were, and he had a cabin built on top of a hill overlooking Kerr Lake. And he was a very famous poet in Canada. He was a bit of a rock star in his day. And in 1907, during now I'm going to get an epidemic. I can't remember. I always forget if it was smallpox or typhoid. He had a stroke. He helped out during that, but some symptoms related to the disease triggered a stroke, and he died. And so the building was dedicated in 1930s in his memory, and the cairn, actually, all that was left at the time was a fireplace, and it has subsequently been relocated, as you say, downtown next door to the library on Lang Street. And then just north of that, immediately north, a new park was recently installed in his memory, the Dr. Drummond Park. And that was a key project by the late David Bridges, Cobalt's poet and cultural ambassador.
Yeah, it was smallpox, by the way. I looked it up. It was
you did? Well,
yeah.
good.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, one of Cobalt's more contemporary, well-known residents is Charlie Angus, just recently retired as an MP, and has written books about Cobalt, and will do so. I'm sure he's a keen student of history. But also, I was thinking maybe, and this is another sidebar, Ben, I've written about Hermie the ghost, because there's all these places downtown that are kind of almost original, and actually in the store where I went, and where supposedly Hermie is, who's written up in other ghosts of towns in Ontario, that the original safe of that particular bank is there. So there's a lot left over, I think, Maggie, when you think about what's in Cobalt today.
There's bits and pieces all over the place. When I was looking at the original document that was prepared to support the federal designation as a park, a heritage site, it talked about artifacts that they deemed worthy of mention, and two of them were the iron lampposts outside of the Fraser Hotel. In my mind, if those are considered worthy of mention, surely the headframes are significant. But Yeah, you have to look around with fresh eyes and just look at the things that are still standing today. The Fraser Hotel was originally built as a Royal Exchange building by the Royal Bank. And it was funded by money that came from Mr. Bilski, who discovered, or his employees discovered, a silver vein on the Nova Scotia mine. And so he built a concrete building in 1910, and that was its claim to fame. It was made of concrete, not wood and brick, and because they had just come through the big fire in 1909. And that building is still standing today, and it's gone through several iterations over the years. Presently, it houses the Bunker Military Museum, a pharmacy, and apartments.
Ben.
And still has those lampposts out front.
Yeah, so I had a couple of things. First of all, we did do an episode last year on not a lot of the stuff we're talking about, but on Cobalt. Of course, we had Dr. Catherine Maston on, who wrote.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, she wrote the book Cobalt: A Mining Town and Canadian Immigration. It's a little bit more about the Group of Seven and arts.
And Maggie helped a lot with that book.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cool little thread. Almost a year from when we did that. Maybe Maggie, talk a little bit about your involvement in that novel.
That was a fascinating project for me. I was with Catherine working on that for about 2-3 years on that over, a period of months and weeks. And she would send me pictures of the paintings, and she said, "Where is this?" And I just delved into the old photos, and I learned a ton of stuff about the art for one, but also just about the mines that were in question. And I'm finding that the artists, Franklin Carmichael's Northern Mine is iconic, I think, in representing cobalt. And they sure did take some license with it, turning gray and black and no green, lots of gray, lots of black, lots of dark browns, and they turned it into a real pastoral scene, vivid blues and greens and bucolic clouds, and wow. And then in the middle is this dark, menacing series of spires poking out front and center, very, very dark. And from my understanding of Franklin Carmichael, Catherine is his granddaughter. This was, he was an environmentalist, and he would have been put off by what he saw in 1930s when he was here, which was lots of rock piles, lots of rack and ruin, way worse than anything I ever saw when I came up 10 years ago, whatever. It was a fascinating project, and I was very happy to be part of that.
And one of the things that you talked about a little bit, this was a while ago, was the talk about how the board that you're on, it's a lot older, right? It's a much older population, and it got me thinking of a conversation I had. I think it was yesterday when we were recording Echo Essentials, and I can't remember if this happened on mic or if this was off mic, but we were just talking about the idea that younger people need to get more involved with their communities, and specifically, I was thinking about this too, and I'm like, there's so many social clubs that are around. If we look at like North Bay, right? You've got Rotary. You have a lot of the Hall of Fame people. A lot of the those kind of society. You know what I'm talking about, Bill? Service clubs and those kind of things that younger people aren't involved in. And I think that has to do a little bit with social media and the dynamics of how, you don't really need to go into these clubs to socialize anymore because you can do it any time in your pocket with your phone or your computer. So it just kind of sparked that idea of like, how do you get more people involved? And is this going to be an epidemic to a lot of these historical sites and clubs in 20, 30 years when a lot of these people unfortunately start to pass away and there's no one to pass the torch to?
It is, the legacy is a concern of ours. When I think back to when I was working, and I don't have a family, but if I think about other people who do have a family, you just don't have the time to devote to these sorts of things unless you are particularly drawn to what they offer. You got kids, you got parents to look after and things like that. I understand it that there aren't so many young people involved in these sorts of things these days. It takes a certain mindset too to understand that you have to give back to the community in order for it to flourish and to have what you want from a community. And I think it takes a little while for that understanding to come. One thing that always makes me laugh is during our municipal elections in 2022, a lot of people said, well, you know what the Cobalt Historical Society needs? They need more signs and they need more volunteers. And I just rolled my eyes at that. This place is littered. It's prickling with signs. People don't stop to read them. I believe some do during the tourist season if that's what they're coming for purposely, but they're just part of the landscape. They're like the picket fence out front. You just walk by it 1,000 times, but you really don't take the time to read it. So yeah, it's a perennial problem. There will always be somebody to pick up the torch, I hope. But I don't think we're ever going to get a real ground-swelling motion of people, 30s, 40s, to come on board and take charge.
And is that more?
I just don't.
Is it more difficult with the small population that Cobalt has, which I think is under 1,000 people, if I'm right? So
I believe you.
So you have even fewer. Like North Bay, we have 50,000 plus the surrounding area. There, you've only got 1,000, right? So. And this kind of leads into my other question is is mining making a comeback? They've been talking about it in Cobalt. They've been talking about starting it up, and that's how you get a younger population as well, and you get people to come in there. For somebody that lives there, have you seen any movement on bringing back the mining or any sort of industrial industry?
Okay, that's a two-part question. Yeah. Oh gosh, the first part was about the volunteering. The problem with the volunteer, not a problem, but it's a challenge with volunteering. Most of us have multiple seats. We wear multiple hats. I am the chair of the Cobalt Historical Society. I am also the treasurer of the Haileybury Heritage Museum. And we support the Bunker Military Museum. We support the Cobalt Mining Museum. People usually are involved in more than one, sometimes 3, 4, 5 different agencies at any one time. A lot of cross-pollination, I call it. So that is definitely a small problem. Between Cobalt and Coleman, we have about 1,600 people, and there's not a lot of us to go around. Most of us are retired, which is great, but we're also tired too. So the second thing about mining, it's my husband here, he'd have the right word for it. It's cyclical. There it is. It's cyclical. It comes and it goes as economic circumstances change, which are changing right now with the issues in the United States, and keeping our eyes on the mining thing. It'll probably be an uptick in mining these days as the price of gold is at record historic heights. Silver is also quite high, but will they come back into cobalt to look for silver? It's cyclical. We recently had Kuya Silver is still here. Kuya Silver are the folks that are out in Kerr Lake, also very supportive of heritage, by the way. They are the current company that's out here exploring for other silver deposits, and they have found some. Whether it'll actually come on as a mine remains to be seen. 2 or 3 years ago, there was airborne surveys being done looking for diamonds, I understand, south of Latchford. A few years before that, they were exploring the Langus mine up in Casey Township, and they found diamonds as well. Whether that will actually materialize, Probably not, but it gains excitement. They promote their stock for a little bit, and then things fall off again. So it's been cyclical in nature. Cobalt actually had three main pushes, I guess you could call it. There was the initial boom in 1906, and then it came online again in the 50s when Cobalt now was being used. Was being sought after, and then another surge, and also in the 50s they found more silver, and silver Miller came online, and that was a new resurgence. And then again, Paul Penna came into town, and he was a great benefactor, by the way. I want to give a nod to Paul Penna. The library is named after him. And thanks to a legacy fund that was established in his name, the nonprofit heritage organizations in town, including the library, get a very nice boost every spring. So that was Agnico Eagle. It was his company that they drained the lake again and reclaimed the tailings because new technologies had come online, and they were able to make their money that funded now their gold mining empire.
Now,
big gold mining company.
Maggie, I want to ask you about the Heritage Silver Trail, I should say. And what's one of your favorite spots for interpretation, or for whatever reason it might be? I'm just curious about that. I've mentioned a couple of mine.
Yeah, I like the McKinley Dara Mill. It strikes me every time I drive by it, and it brings to mind Mayan ruins with the stages, the tiers that are going up. It's very striking when you first encounter it driving on the road. That's one of my favorites. And I have to say the Nipissing mine, if you go up top, you see to the lookout that's up there. You get a panoramic view of the townscape from north to south, and you can see the two ONR sites, the town site at one end and the right-of-way. You have to know what you're looking for, but you see them. I want to share a little bit of information that I discovered about the Nipissing mine just last year as I was helping another fella do some research. He wanted to know the full name of the Nipissing mine owner, and it was Ellis Potter Earl, Earl with an E on the end. And Ellis Potter Earl was the owner of the mining, milling places in the States, in New Jersey, that had the technology to extract the silver from the nickel arsenides. It was it was a process that nobody in Canada could do at the time. With the money that Mr. Earl made from owning the Nipissing mine, which was by far the largest in the camp, it was almost 850 acres, he and his cohorts in the 1930s put together a company that built the Empire State Building in New York. This boggles my mind. And that was a story that hadn't been found before, I thought. And we hear about the Casa Loma in Toronto. That was money that was made. Sir Henry Pallett built his Folly in Toronto, and it's a tourist place now. But that was from draining Cobalt Lake, and the Cobalt Lake mine. Multimillionaires made all kinds of money and took it out and built their mansions and their estates and supported their businesses. But when I found out that E.P. Earl funded the Empire State Building from the Nipissing mine, I'm still gobsmacked by that. I had no idea.
Well, that's one of the stories of Northern Ontario, storylines, I should say, that we never know, certainly in mining, where all the money goes, because it doesn't necessarily stay in Northern Ontario. It's fascinating, the story of Cobalt, and I highly recommend people to stop at all the museums in downtown Cobalt and take the Heritage Silver Trail. And your commitment to heritage preservation is exemplary, as I said at the outset. And thank you for being on the Backroads Bill podcast today, Maggie.
So So a big thank you to Maggie for coming on the podcast. Again, the amount of history Cobalt has is fascinating. And again, we talked about the other podcast I did at the top of this show where we talked about the rise and fall of Cobalt. I will put that link in the description if you want to check that episode out. But Cobalt's, it's like the gift that keeps giving. It's such a fascinating place. And the people that live there are so passionate about their community because it's so small and tight-knit. And Maggie was absolutely fantastic. So again, Maggie, thank you so much for coming on. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast, you can find us on your favorite podcast player, Apple, Spotify, you name it. We're probably there. The video version is on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel, or you can just find everything on northbayecho.ca. The video, the audio, a whole bunch of other podcasts. All of that can be found on northbayecho.ca. And one last time, please check us out next week across our shows for Kindness Week. If you're in the North Bay area, do yourself a favor and just be kind. You should be doing it anyways, but it's a perfect excuse to just do that kind gesture. Check out some of the cool stuff going downtown and really just engage in your community over the next 7 days or so. So that wraps things up for us with me and Bill. Come back next week as we talk trees for Nipissing with Peggy and Cindy. It'll be a fantastic episode. Talk about doing something great for our community. So make sure you come back next week for another Backroads adventure. Spring is here, and that means one thing. Baseball is back. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of every pitch, every catch, and every moment that brings our community together on the diamond. Whether it's outfitting little leaguers for their very first game, helping local teams suit up for the season, or simply sharing the love of the sport, we're here for it. We're more than just a sports store. We're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to support the leagues, schools, and families who make North Bay's baseball scene so special. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way.